Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, Jeet Kune Rebel. Wait, hold on a second. I got to restart this because it looks like. Hang on. Okay. All right. We should be good. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues episode number 205. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I'm excited to talk to this young gentleman who I've never met before. We are famous Facebook buddies, right? Mike, first things first. Is it Yuskiw?
Yes, it is. It
Oh,
is.
all right. I didn't want to mess that up. And are you and Krivka from the same part of the world or something?
Yes, exactly. I'm very close to where he does his CrossFit, kettlebell, and also teaching his martial arts because he does all of that now. So right now, I'm only a couple miles away from where he has his school. Actually.
Okay. I actually was referring to your surnames. Are you of the same like ethnic group or something?
He's adopted. And I'm not exactly sure where his adopted parents, I'm not sure their ethnicity. My spelling is what the Ellis Island guys did to my grandfather. That's one of those, like, I think the original Ukrainian was like Yuskiw. And so there was a kind of a formula, like Vito Corleone kind of a thing. They're like, Yuskiw, we're going to drop the J, put a Y on. Okay, you're Yuski from now on. So I think that was a standard Americanization of some kind of a Polish Ukrainian.
Okay.
So yeah, and I kind of have some of the features from that side, even though my Irish side, my mom's side will say, no, you look like so-and-so's uncle. So I got that. But I think that it's possible that Krivka's adopted family is also from the same part of the world.
Okay. Well, Mick Tully is probably really happy to hear that you have Irish blood.
half of it. Right. And he would probably argue it's the good half. So that's...
All right. So the thing so I'll tell everybody, the thing that put Mike, so to speak, on my radar was just his attitude on Facebook in these interminable discussions that we have back and forth. And so let's start there. Give me the background to why your approach to discussion and debate is what it is.
Okay, that's a great question, actually, because when I left the martial arts because of a back injury, and that's a whole other thing, I do have some regrets about leaving in a sense, in a sort of full-time capacity. But I figured, based on the idea of being well-rounded, the things that we really learn in Jeet Kune Do and apply to our lives, I said, what am I going to go back to school in? And I studied political science and Chinese. So then I went to Beijing. I did a master's degree there. And even the past few years, especially with the pandemic, I've looked into a lot of logical fallacies, argumentation, because all of us are behind these screens stuck in the comment section. Especially if you work an office job, people probably were even working from home even before the pandemic really got underway. So if you combine the political science and the diplomacy, because I spent a lot of time in China actually using Chinese, and it's kind of a third track, a fourth track diplomacy where you're just a normal citizen doing stuff over there. And in critical thinking, reasoning, philosophy, argumentation, whatever, you want to bring the concept of good faith to whatever you're talking about. You don't want to come in bad faith. So that doesn't have anything to do with religion. It's more of a debate term. But regardless of the outcome, you're trying to come, understanding that person, coming to the table honestly. This is where I'm coming from. I want to know where you're coming from. So I try to apply that to all of the conversations. And also because I have a high respect for people, as I was, like I said, I kind of left the martial arts at a full-time professional capacity. Like I wasn't working at a school anymore. I went back to school, lived in Beijing. So I respect a lot of people who were beginning when I left and now have their own schools, or I don't have formal rank in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I was skipped around, but now you come back and the guys that you were training with that started off, that you were teaching class, now they have black belts. So I have a high respect for everybody here, and I would never come to these discussions in bad faith and you don't want to get into any of the logical fallacies, particularly the ad hominem. And one of the previous, very recent dialogues, you mentioned the term ad hominem, which actually is still an argument. The name calling isn't even an argument if you think about it. So an ad hominem is still an argument, but you're actually using a fallacious argument where you're saying, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about because he's a bad person, X, Y, and Z. So that's actually a fallacious argument, where if you just name call someone, that's not even an argument. So I paid particular attention to how I wanted to come at. Also, if you've heard about the 4 agreements, so one of them is to be impeccable with your word. So I didn't want to put anything in the comment section that I would look at later on and be like, I shouldn't have said that.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
That's all. That's basically the approach.
Yeah, that's interesting because Napoleon Hill's principle of accurate thinking.
Oh yes, not very well, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. So when I came across that, I decided that I would apply that to speaking also. So not just accurate thinking, but accurate speaking. So I do similar to what you do. Like I type the stuff and I read it out in my head, and then I go, okay, I think this is exactly what I wanted to say.
That's great. I should look that up. We should put that in the comment section, and we should link that below later or something like that.
Yeah. Now, okay. So for those of you who are tuning in and wondering, okay, how come there's only one mic?
That's a good point.
Yeah, we're going to tell
Perez
you that
should have been here.
Yeah, that Michael Perez. Is it official? He did come down with COVID.
Yes, I believe he did. He was. I think he got a test and it was positive. And he's like a soldier. He's right here. He's actually, I can see his comments in the comment section.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, all right. But we miss you, buddy. But we'll get to you in a couple of weeks. All right. Okay. All right. So Napoleon Hill. Is it Don Miguel Ruiz? I think is the author.
Yeah, that's the 4 agreements. Right. Exactly. That's the 4 agreements author.
All right. So we ended. Now, isn't that interesting that you and I end up with a similar approach to how we talk to people, but we come at it from different directions.
Right.
Well, is that not something that can happen in JKD?
Exactly. You can have. Also, we talk about a culture not having a monopoly on the truth. So we find these truths that many cultures discovered. And I think this is similar. We're just talking about people using their words, but also it's valuable for teachers. We all have to communicate. We're all communicators as well. We have to understand our students. We have to understand our training partners. We have to understand our teachers. So I think it's all part of that process. Plus, online here, we're stuck in the comment section. So we're not actually training with each other. We're only using words. That's why some of the recent posts I was talking about philosophy, because we should really think about how someone takes a philosophy class and go about the comment section that way. It has little to do with our actual training. We talk about the training, but we have to use philosophy and words to talk about the training, right? Someone might not be able to articulate their training, but they could actually have the best training methods out there. They just might not be great with words. I'm just using that as an example because we're limited in the comment section by the words that we're using, right. And the philosophy keeps us going in these perpetual circles.
But you know what? I think, though, that if you're going to be a JKD guy or gal, if I have to be correct, politically correct, if you're going to be a JKD guy, you should be able to talk the art as well. You should spend maybe not as much time, but you should definitely invest some time in being able to talk about the art. Don't you think?
Well, yeah, I do, because understanding the way that you can discuss something would reflect your understanding of it, right? Like a couple weeks ago, I think there was a couple posts where we were talking about if you can't say it very simply, then you don't understand it. And there's a lot of truth to that. If it's easy for me to make something sound complicated, to make myself look smart, and the student doesn't really understand it, but they're wowed. I didn't get that, but this guy must be good because it went way over my head. But if you can take complicated stuff and make it simple, then you can. I think that's more what you're talking about. So you have to be able to communicate the ideas.
Hey, I have a confession about that. You know what made complicated stuff simple for me? Filipino Kali.
But that's one of
Yeah,
the reasons why we cross train in it.
yeah,
Like for example, double stick could be very simple when you need to fight with it if you happen to have the luxury of having double sticks. But I think the training in double stick necessarily gets more complicated because it's supposed to train coordination among other things. So
hmm
you'd be training a different attribute, and you'd be training in a different mode.
yeah,
If like for example, if you're doing the goofy heaven six, where you're doing the abanico thing, you're intentionally making that more complicated, like juggling, to train the coordination, right? But that doesn't mean that you would all of a sudden in a fight try to use,
right. Yeah,
some sort
and I think that sometimes, well, not sometimes, maybe most of the times, if not all the time, the Kali detractors, their belief is that we are somehow complicating what we're doing. They don't
right.
understand that everything is run through what I call the Jeet Kune filter. So yes, there are some intricate or complicated, like the running attacks with all the spinning and what have you. All right, well
Right, like
that's
the Archangel series. I'm wearing the Archangel.
there you go, right?
So
Yeah,
they have the spinning order beast and stuff like that. It's fun, But would I really run at somebody with a spinning order beast? Now that could have been
exactly.
multiple attackers. Like I
Yeah,
had to defend this way, and I defended someone over there. So it may
yeah.
not be with one person,
Well,
but
exactly. See,
also
so that's the thing. So what they don't understand is that we look at what we're given and we break it down to try to find that which is useful in it. All right.
but
Instead,
also even,
go ahead.
and I would actually just piggyback off of that, to frame things. I think it's important that sometimes we are conflating, or we're not describing, okay, that what we actually need to do when the shit goes down, we have to defend our lives. That is one thing. But when you're just training broadly, because we're going to be training for what, the rest of our lives, I mean,
Right.
we don't want to be just training only for the next couple of weeks, because we know that somehow we knew the future, and someone's going to try to kill me at the gas station 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to train or I have a fight. If you are the luxury of knowing you're training for a fight, and that's not even real life, wouldn't even be like if you're actually someone's trying to kill you on the street. You're training intensely for that. But you can't train like that all the time. And we're training our entire lives, right? We might be training 6 days a week, and you can't always look at the Krav Maga guys. So if they're constantly training, they're always getting like an injury. Like Conor McGregor could have had a hairline fracture in his shin because he was going too hard before that last fight, and the broken leg may not have actually happened in the ring. He could have had a hairline fracture. He was training too hard, right? So you have the art, the sport, and the science. Because some of the stuff doesn't always fall into the strict science stuff. So sometimes I think in our debates between the two sides, we may be conflating a training that develops the entire human being versus the stuff that's absolutely street applicable right now to save my life. Now, that's not to say that I think we should train stuff that doesn't work. We should.
Right.
That's the Matt Thornton thing. Why should you train stuff that's not functional? So there's an argument there, but we also are complete human beings. I've studied Chinese. It relates to it. We end up talking about some of this historical stuff, or some Chinese characters come up. I can look it up. So that's not related to combat, but that might enrich the whole human being. So
Yeah.
I think when we talk about cross training, we talk about the attributes, we talk about being a complete human being, training all these different things. And we're actually sometimes not talking about, okay, just finger jab, just a groin kick, just the quickest, most powerful thing, and then track and field the hell out of there. Like we might say, okay, well, you might need cross, tie kick, you might need this, you might need that. If he falls, you might be able to get a lock. But we also might be training with our 5 or 6-year-old where double sticks might be cool. We might be training with our 80-year-old grandmother where they might want to learn the yang long form. So even if that stuff's not functional, it developed us as a more well-rounded human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get into a story about Beijing, but when I was in Beijing, I went to a gym and there was like 5 or 6 trainers, and they all trained in something different. One was a judo guy, one was sanda, one was aikido. They all had some different. One actually did train in the Filipino martial arts a little bit. So when I would go in there and I would say to them, okay, who's got time this afternoon? sometimes they'd be like, he's a crazy American. No, I got a client coming in. But I wouldn't be able to just say, no, you got to do my thing. I would have to put everything aside and do their thing.
Right.
So I think the cross training is more than just, this is exactly what I'm going to be able to use when the shit hits the fan. I don't think we have the luxury of only looking at it through, I can only do X. Once you actually do the functional stuff, all the stuff that you shouldn't neglect, you still have the rest of, you have to do all this other stuff, right? You have to get into the other combinations. You have to make the double stick more complicated, right? You have to put a knife in his hand or a red magic marker and you're all wearing white. And then you see, holy shit, I have a lot of red on me at the end of the evening. So you have to get into these things. And when we talk about the stuff we're doing across training, those conversations end up leading the two sides to be like, wait, why are you guys training that? Because like I said, we're going to be training our entire lives, right? I mean, you need to take the stuff as far as you can, the highest level that you can take stuff in whatever that's considered. Right. Won't detract from the fundamentals, because you have to maintain those good basics, right? I mean, a lot of the advanced stuff is just the basics done really well.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna devil's advocate what you just said, because it sounds to me like you're saying, oh, so are you saying you have to train in another art from A to Z? You have to train the entire art. Right. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Right. No, actually, I don't think you do. That's the thing. That's actually the thing. So it seems like the cross-training thing that we take, it seems to be more of this personal enrichment path. And I don't think one would really, no, I don't think you necessarily need to do it to get to the same place. I think you can get there by another route. I think you can get there by only training in X. I mean, a lot of arts, if you can find enough instructors for that one art that have every aspect of it, a lot of arts have, the striking, the kicking, the elbows, knees, the headbutts, the weapons, the grappling. It might be fairly complete. And as one of the things that we always heard Guru Dan say in seminar, great judo guys will know all the judo throws, but they only really use like 3, and they've got 1,000 ways to get there, right? So maybe someone can get to their own personal truth only by using one thing or 2 things. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, that may be their own truth. That may get into more of a philosophical question where it's not I wouldn't be able to answer that for them. But I think my personal enrichment path had to have taken this Guru Dan path, because if you're in an 8-hour seminar, I remember the seminars used to be really long, right? We used to go in early and stay later. And he starts going into pre-Magellan stuff. That's all the historical stuff. I like the language, whether it's Chinese or Tagalog, or we're trying to get into some other, you do Karika wrong, and you're trying to remember the terminology stuff. I like all that extra stuff, the culture, the history. It doesn't necessarily help me on the street, right. But I'm going to be doing this stuff all my, I mean, like I said, once I hurt my back and I didn't think I could do a lot of the stuff anymore. I went into actually learning Chinese language. Because I was like, well, I have to broaden the circle. So that gets into more of, like, not only did I try and apply Jeet Kune to being a student, to go back to school, like I developed the 5 ways of attack of a student.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to interrupt you because I want to talk to you about that.
Please.
I want to talk to you about that philosophy article that you posted earlier. But before we do that, let's backtrack to martial art beginnings. And let's talk about the physical stuff, like where you started, how you started.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the DC area, Maryland. So when I started, when I was, I started in the Korean arts, the local Taekwondo school on the East Coast, or in the Maryland, and I think in Florida a little bit, the Mid-Atlantic, the Mid-Atlantic karate. I think it was Tong Soo-do, and they had some jiu-jitsu on the ground. But essentially, this was kind of the most watered down, where you go to the community center and you're standing around with all the kids trying to learn your form. Nobody knows what they're doing, and they're all looking at everybody else. Okay, I go this way. Is he going this way? It's one of those, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you're already 10, and you're a green belt, and you're teaching the white belts their form. So that's very typical of those kind of things. So then in that area, I started looking for different Taekwondo schools, because Taekwondo was everywhere. And I was kind of wowed. This was like late 80s. Okay. So This is before Olympic Taekwondo was put in the Olympics. And it was when trembling shock was still in there, because if you look at Taekwondo now, they kind of took trembling shock out. It's more of a sport thing. So trembling shock was pretty cool. I mean, it was a really good chess match with the kicks, and it was really powerful. I mean, trembling shock, you had to displace the person's body. So if you kicked them standing still, they actually had to like move over. Or if they were kicking and you kicked them, you had to actually stop them in mid kick. Like you had to shut that kick down with your kick. So to me, that was a respectable way to use the kicking. Like I was like, okay, I can deliver to the bag. When I hit this guy, he's flying into the wall, etc. So this is trembling shock with the chest gear on and the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm riding my bike around to the different schools in the area, and this gets into the whole respecting the individual, not the art, which is one of the things in Jeet Kune Do. Because when I was skipping around to schools, that was seen as very disrespectful, even among the Korean community. They were supposed to stay at one school. So I was like, well, right. You guys aren't teaching sparring at all, so I'm going to go somewhere else. So we're winning in forms, but come on, you guys are like, well, you're not going to win in forms, and you're not going to win in sparring, so we're not going to do it. I'm like, well, sorry, I'm going to go somewhere else. So maybe about 18, maybe this was maybe 1996 now. I kept doing the Taekwondo thing for a long time. I was disheartened by the way they were giving away black belts, so I just continued wearing a red belt for a number of years. You got the stained uniform; it's red because you refused. I refused to test for a black belt. I literally refused. I was like, no, because I'm better than your black belts, and this whole like you guys aren't actually training. I was trying to realize the methodologies and how I kept getting hurt and kicking those, and I was like, how come I'm not good? Like I know I wasn't that good. I was training. I could kick hard. I could kill the bag when I would spar. I would chase people around. I couldn't land anything. I couldn't defend stuff. Every time it would like, why are they blocking this way? Like it's not that the art didn't work. It's that they just kind of watered stuff down and you didn't get other things. And you kept trying stuff and stuff wouldn't work. So anyway, about 18 years old, we're about 1996 now. I get kicked in the back. You're sparring, you always mismatch sizes. So I'm sparring with someone big, about 200 pounds or 180, and I'm only about 120 pounds. So wow. you do the thing where you kind of like feint and spin for the back kick, like you kind of like boom, and then immediately spin for the back kick, right? Yeah. And we kick each other in the spine at the same time. Like both of us basically did the spinning back kick at the same time. So because he was a lot heavier, that hit to the spine actually caused disc damage. I didn't really feel it for that couple minutes. Right. By the time I drove home, I couldn't get out of the car. Couldn't walk up the stairs. So this was the first big back injury that I really had. So after that, I kind of I got out of Taekwondo. I really focused on my own. I was already kind of a personal trainer. I mean, I was still in high school, just graduated, but I was getting certified working as a personal trainer. So at that time, the spine specialist that I was going to and the chiropractors and stuff like that, they're like, wow, you really have a messed up disc. Like it's not really herniated, but it's black on the, like it's dark when we look at the screen. It should be white. They're all white. And this one was like dark. So like, you're going to be in a wheelchair when you're 50. Like you shouldn't. One of the spine specialists literally said, this is Kaiser Permanente. So this will show my contempt for the healthcare industry. A lot of people get a kick out of this. So he says to me, okay, you should get all this. You should start training the muscle between your ears. Stop all this other crap you're doing. And I was kind of like, okay. Then he showed me the thing and he said, and now he knew I was a personal trainer already. And he said, you see this white area in the middle? This is your spine. I was like, are you really trying to insult my intelligence like that? Like you've given me nothing. You basically said the apex of your knowledge as a spine specialist is there's nothing you can do. You should stop doing this. That's basically what he said. So I said, okay, well, I'm gonna cancel Kaiser Permanente. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to the gym. I'm gonna talk to these osteopathic osteopath, the sort of the bone specialist, exercise science doctors, the sports medicine guys. A lot of them say it's all in how you feel. You get into training what you can. Anytime I heard about people getting surgery for their back, they basically would just fuse vertebrae together and it would just shift issues somewhere else because you'd lose mobility in that area. So I did a lot of yoga. I wasn't really confident at that time that I could come back fully. But once I was, building myself in the gym, doing what I could, I was pretty functional and I was able to, that's how I got into Jeet Kune Do again. That's how I got back into martial arts. I met Mike Krivka right around that time.
Right.
But I met someone else first who was one of the fake guys. Someone who said he trained under Grandmaster Donatello. I didn't know anything. So I met this guy. I trained with him a little bit. He had me doing this kind of bizarre Paksao kind of a thing. And I checked in with, I said, okay, well, I know there's someone else in the area. And that's when I looked up Mike Krivka. And the first conversation with Mike Krivka actually didn't go that well because I said, yeah, because this was in 1996 and there was a lot of other stuff going on. There was probably worse politics then, and you would know this, than there is now. A lot of us just really talk about the philosophy. We have disagreements. Back then, there was like death threats leveled against people like Guru Dan, and you'd have people getting kicked out of seminars, and Ron Balicki and people would stand at the door and say, "You're not getting back in the seminar." Like a lot of stuff. I'd heard some notorious stories in the past.
Yeah.
So when I called up Mike Krivka and I said, "I want to know if this guy's legit, and I want to come to your school," and he said, "Well, if you already have this instructor, why are you calling me? What do you need me for?" So at the certain point in the conversation, I said, let's start over. Hi, I'd like to come to your school and train. And once I started training with him, that was it. I did my first Guru Dan seminar in like 1997. We trained with all the usual guys. Burt Richardson was still in the U.S. before he moved to Hawaii. So we brought him in. We were seeing Eric Paulson, Higan Machado. We were bringing in all, I think Mike Krivka actually had a big enough school at that time to bring in Guru Dan for a seminar or two. Okay. But Pat Trey brings in Guru Dan every year. So we would go down there. We'd go up to Princeton, New Jersey, or Don Guerin School in Pittsburgh. Okay. So we would travel to, those were the usual stops that we would, but Burt Richardson would see a couple different guys. Like I remember there was someone in Erie, Pennsylvania, or Erie, Pennsylvania, way up near upstate New York. I don't know if he's still affiliated, but this was when it was JKD Unlimited, before he got into the high performance. So that was before, like I said, before he moved to Hawaii. Okay. So during that time, I was training under Mike Krivka, like as much as I could. Like we had classes during the week and class on Saturday, and I was training at Yamasaki Dala Jiu-Jitsu, and that was when Mike Moses, who's a guy who does Evolve, he has a school in this area. It's before he started Evolve.
Oh yeah. Man, I haven't heard that name in a while.
And there's a guy named Nakapan who got his black belt under Master Yamasaki as well, and he started his own school. I believe it's called something like Beta Martial Arts, something like that. So he's in Washington. He's in
DC.
Exactly. So these guys were like purple belts or whatever, and also so any of those, I didn't spend enough time I didn't spend as much time as I'd like to at Yamasaki, because I was more full-time under Mike Krivka, and I was probably paying something ridiculous like $300 a month for martial arts lessons. If you do the inflation in the late 90s, that's a lot. That was a lot. That's not That's not today's cash. That was that was more than 20 years ago. Yeah. So I ended up hurting my back another time or two from squatting. I was actually in the gym, too tired to be lifting when I was lifting, and I hurt my back. So when I was I was actually driving down to Woodbridge, Virginia, to work at Pat Trey's school, the Trident Academy, at the old location. If anybody knows, it was across the street from Potomac Mills in Virginia, off Smoketown Road, before it was at the new school. And I think I hurt my back again while I was there. And at that point, I was kind of disheartened in a way, because I felt I'm really in the right place. I'm right where I want to be. Mm-hmm. It's kind of
Hey guys, did I lose him, or can you all still hear him?
Thing, you have to kind of let the muscle spasms relax, and you can go into some relaxed stretches and kind of get. So I don't have any issues like that these days, because I think I've corrected a lot of muscular and flexibility imbalances. Okay. But the disc damage is still there. That doesn't go away. So if I don't maintain core strength and functional movements and stuff like that, you can still feel things. So my back could still get those kind of things where you can't really move for a day or two. Yeah. So anyway, mentally, this did screw with me. So like I said, I was off and on in the martial arts right around the time. Now we're getting up to 2003. I say, I really have to go back to school. I went back to community college, brought up a lot of I had like a 1.9, really low, and I brought up to 3.5, graduated with honors. And that's when I did the 5 ways of attack of a student.
Okay, let's do that now then.
So I figured it's the same kind of thing as the 5 ways of attack in combat. We have to be simple. We have to be direct. We have to be efficient, right? What is a student going to deal with? They're going to have to write papers. This is going to sound really basic, but when you really go about it and break it down, you can become a much better student when you can divide these things that a student would face. You have to write papers. You have to take tests. You have to read books. You have to understand the consistency, and you also have to understand yourself to build good habits. So I took a film class so that I could only write papers, wouldn't have to read. Because if you have to read and write papers, like if you have to read a book and write a paper on it, now you're combining the reading skill and the writing skill. So I try to divide and conquer. I took a film class and I wrote papers on the films. When I went back to the biology class, which I had failed for biology, so I stopped going. You know, one of those things where you just decide, oh, well, I'm not going to go to class today. Oh, crap, I've missed too many classes. When I went back and took that, I would sit in the library and read 20 pages of that textbook. It would take me an hour. But I just kept doing that. I knew, okay, I know it's going to take me an hour to read these 20 pages. So if I have 60 pages, all right, I'm going in at 8. I might take a couple of breaks, but I'm literally going to do nothing from 8 o'clock until like noon, except for read this damn biology book. That's it. You know, you get into test taking skills. Not only do you get into test anxiety kind of stuff where you kind of understand, okay, I'm going to be here for a minute. Let me look around. Everyone's nervous. Let me just breathe. Okay, let's look at the test. Let's scan things. Look at the sections. You start dealing with multiple choice. Let's eliminate things I know aren't right. I mean, you start to get into test-taking skills as well. You know, you understand how to break down textbooks. What are they really asking? Turn sections into a question. You know, scan the whole thing. Look at the questions at the back. You don't just start reading. You have to really understand how to digest material, right? With consistency, it's kind of like starting strong and ending strong, like a fight. You can't just, it also takes motivation. There's a certain level of motivation. So that kind of blends the consistency with the personal habits. You know, those are really what I call 4 and 5, is the consistency is 4 and the habits are really 5. But they overlap. But the habits is more like you have to know yourself. So I was never one of those guys that could do the thing people usually say where after you get out of class, you study. I would do that. But I was much better putting my classes in the middle in the afternoon and going in the morning and really preparing before I would go into class. Right. You know, like I already had the material read, or I would sit there for as long as it took and read it, you know, where I'd prepare it again before I would go into class. So this garbage that people, for me, it wouldn't work to say, put all my classes in the morning and just get them over with. No way. I would do like one class and have 2 hours, another class and have 2 hours. And I would never take more than like 12 credits in a semester. And I went summer, winter, spring, fall. I was always in class, but I wasn't doing this stuff where let me just take 15 or 18 and get over with, because you're not mastering the material. Right. So using these kinds of, and I keep looking over because I made some notes just to make sure I had some, you know, like what's the best time that you study? I found I studied best in the morning. You know, how do you stay focused? You know, I used a lot of powerful music. I would also move every 2 hours. Right. I also realized that I wasn't good at home. I never would do this stuff at home. I would go on campus and I'd be there for 12 or 15 hours a day. I'd go to someplace in the library. 2 hours later, I would, you know, go pick all your stuff, put it in a backpack, go to the bathroom, wash your hands and face, find somewhere else, sit there for 2 hours, and just kept doing it. So, but this kind of thing got me 4 degrees. I maintained a 3.9 for almost 9 years. I graduated from Maryland, magna cum laude in political science and cum laude in Chinese. I got 2 degrees in 4 years at Maryland, and then I went to Beijing and did a master's there. And keep in mind, I became fluent in Chinese at 27. Where a lot of people are like, well, it's too late to study language. I was pretty much fluent by the time it was 35. I studied at 27. So I tried to take the idealism, like the idea in the martial arts where you want to become like the best you can be, this sort of like personal goal, and the idealism of making a better place, kind of the hero idea of doing something for the world. I kind of leaped from the personal hero thing of being that fighter like Rocky to the idealistic hero that tries to save the world, so to speak, because that gave me the purpose. And when I got back from Beijing, I went into the self-development thing where I said, well, you have to be a well-rounded person. So maybe I'm too focused on the physical, that maybe, and I obviously with the education I focused on, I had that component, the language,
Right.
but maybe I was missing meditative stuff. So I got into the Wim Hof breathing, which got me a much easier way to meditate. People who are ADD or can't focus very well, meditation, you just kind of sit there. And everybody's been in some class where an instructor says, all right, sit down. Everyone sit down, close your eyes. And you're like, am I doing it right? What are you doing? Are you just sitting there? And you're like, and just close your eyes, don't talk. And you're, is this right? What am I supposed to be doing? And so everyone's kind of had that, is this what meditation is? So when I came back out of the student thing, I still feel you can expand the same philosophy to your life. You be a better father, be better professionally, do something that might develop you, especially if you like your career, do something that helps you professionally, continue the physical stuff. But we already have the physical stuff on lockdown, right? We do the martial arts, we do the fitness, we stretch. So we may be overly focused on physical stuff where we right. It may be good to learn a language for some of the guys. It may be good to say, oh, well, let me read up on some sciences, or let me, so it maybe learning guitar, learn some right. instrument, that might develop the musical thing. So I think that is a well-rounded, that's the broader sort of personal, but it's just kind of like circles, right? Usually we're focused on just combat, right? But I feel the philosophy really can be broadened out.
What do you think? So, what do you think people should make of the fact that Bruce Lee had over 2,000 books in his personal library? What should people make of that?
So that's actually the philosophy thing that I was talking about earlier, and you mentioned the article. So I think as a philosopher and also a student, really, it's lifelong learning. And I don't think a philosopher like Bruce Lee would have ever been satisfied the way he phrased things. I think he still would have been not the same, but there still would have been other philosophy, other quotes, other passages, because we're trying to use words as an art form, but the art form is to philosophize in a sense. We're not writing poetry. He wasn't writing, and sometimes it was poetic. Yeah. But it's the philosophy in there. It's not the haiku or whatever, but I mean, you watch the Lost Interview, and when he's saying acting, unacting, or he's saying natural, unnaturalness.
Unnaturalness, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely supposed to be, this kind of let's be profound with the language. So I was actually saying in the group the other day, we're trying to express simplicity in the most profound way possible, right? I mean, it's the idea with this philosophy is, how can we make this sound better? How can I make this phrase sound more to the truth, but also sound good? You want to make it sound right. Good. So it's like we're all engaging in a philosophy class with no final exam. No professor. We're just engaged in a perpetual discussion group, right?
Yeah, well, that to me was perhaps the most interesting aspect of what it is that you were talking about, because we are engaged in philosophical discussion. That probably is why we keep going back to the same topics, let's say, right? But I don't think that everybody, when we go back to the same topic, I don't think everybody is either their language or their way of thinking. I think it's just, I'll just drop these phrases that I've dropped before, which I imagine to them sound profound, so they'll spout those again. But nobody's even trying to rework what it is that they're saying or thinking. Does that make sense?
Right. But that gets you a few participation points, in the class, right? But you're not going to really get an A on the paper if you just keep, if we were taking a class, you'd get a participation point or two for it, right?
Yeah,
but you're not really writing anything. The essay at the end of the semester is not going to be something that new. That's not taking anything away from them. They're just, maybe they're not looking at it as a philosophy class. They're just coming in, oh, we've already addressed this. And the philosophy class that I'm talking about, even though people say, we're still arguing about this, it's still a useful thing. And actually, I don't see how Bruce Lee would have ever stopped that. I actually think he still would have been talking about various aspects of philosophy. Like I said, he may not have still go over the same ground all the time, but he might be talking about very different things these days. But I can't see how he wouldn't be talking about philosophy. Philosophers never stop talking about the philosophy, right? I mean, they never stop. They just never stop. That's why I think that. And if you look at the Tao, which Jeet Kune Do has, that the philosophical roots, part of it are definitely from Taoism. I mean, there's a Taoist priest. Sure. He's the Taoist. There's a drawing of the Taoist priest right on the inside, in the inside page, right? So the Tao itself, and that's what I was talking about with the Tao Te Ching, when I was talking about the first few lines of the Tao Te Ching, and the Tao that can be explained is not the eternal Tao. And that story is interesting because the guard said, you can't leave, you got to give us the wisdom. He said, well, if you're going to try to read and get it from there, you're not going to get it. But fine, I'll write it. So that's why the first line is almost a joke. The Tao that can be explained is not the eternal Tao. So that contradiction, well, not contradiction, but the paradox is already sort of baked into the concept. It's already in there. And so because something like yin yang, or whatever, and the Tao is such a philosophical concept anyway, and it's integral to the idea of this natural unnaturalness, right? Is open to all and bound by none, or however you want to talk about the philosophy. That is absolutely a philosophical discussion, So
you just used the word concept twice. Do you think the term Jeet Kune Do concepts was in any way a misnomer, or was it accurate?
That's a good question. And I'm not actually sure that, I mean, I can give you the opinion. I'm not sure how authoritative it is, because I'm unapologetically a Jeet Kune Do concepts guy. Now, maybe concepts is not the right term. Maybe, I mean, and if we could get into synonyms or semantics by using principles and, precepts or, there's other things. But you might be right in that the misnomer could be that we're trying to distill it down too much or take things out, and then here's the concepts, but it's not, like someone might say, well, you're not treating it as an art, you're just saying it's only these concepts. So that may be a semantical thing where maybe that does mislead a little bit, I think a lot of us that have trained in, if you train in a Guru Dan seminar and you've had the experience of trying to take notes, only getting 10% of what's really going on, it's like you're trying to drink water out of the fire hose. And that's not to say other instructors aren't like that. But you get so much that I think we kind of know that it's called concepts, but I don't think most of us would want to go away from the cross training just because of how rich the experience is, right? And that's kind of why I started to do certain posts. Let's take one technique and see how many arts we can find this from. Because, and we're not adding styles to Jeet Kune Do. We simply enjoy cross training. Like I wouldn't say I'm adding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to my personal Jeet Kune Do.
Okay, but what do you think is meant by that? That
I think it's philosophical, because when someone says, well, you don't have a Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do is Bruce Lee's art. Yeah, that's true. But I think when people say that, they're talking about the philosophical thing when Bruce was like, I'm teaching them to express themselves through physical movement. And so they're saying, yeah, this is the expression that I'm using. It happens to be this collection of things. And then I think that's where we go from the philosophy into this boundary of actual martial arts, where someone's like, well, you can't call that your personal Jeet Kune Do. There's no such thing as your personal Jeet Kune Do. So we stray from the philosophical into maybe there's a misunderstanding, because one person might be like, well, we're talking about martial arts. Another one's like, well, I'm actually talking about philosophy here. And that's why I'm talking about things like a philosophy class. Because if we know we're only talking about the philosophy, we're not actually trying to say, I'm adding Kali to my own personal Jeet Kune Do, and therefore Kali is part of Jeet Kune Do. That's part of the philosophical discussion about acting, unacting, and naturalness, unnaturalness, and stuff, natural, unnaturalness. I don't think any of us who really understand Bruce Lee's arts and the way that Dana Inosanto teaches it would actually say, I really love all the silat we did. I'm adding silat to my own personal Jeet Kune Do. And I don't think any of us would really say that. We just, once we train in the silat, we're like, this is really profound stuff. You got the foot positioning, the balance, the understanding of the different triangles where you turn things, and they got all these different. These are really interesting. And to use the word concept, there could be a concept in there where it's like, wait a second, the way they set up this throw was similar to the way that counter in judo. Like once I was in the position, that guy countered me in judo with the same footwork. And then you end up seeing, wait, that what's that African art where they have the spear and they use the one danbe? You'll see things in that art too.
Right.
And so that's where the concept, like the stop hit's the classic one. The teep can be used when someone's coming in against a cross. That's a stop kick. The classic Jeet tech, side kick against the lead knee. That's the classic Jeet, the classic interception, right? Mm-hmm. The epee, you don't have to have right of way like you have to do with the foil. The foil you have to have right of way, like a good driver. You got to have the right of way to go. With epee, you just go no. So the stop hit, that's where I think the concept, that concept of a stop hit, that's where I think saying Jeet Kune Do concepts is useful. However, I think the misnomer that you were saying is to say that only thing we're doing is teaching this collection of concepts. So I think calling it that, Jeet Kune Do concepts versus original, I think both of them are in a way a misnomer. Because even the original guys have had to go, look at what Sifu Singh has done. He's supposedly an original guy, but he's gone beyond there. You have to, in your own personal development, go beyond whatever happened at 1972, right? I mean, it's not blasphemy to say that. There's no way that Bruce Lee would say, only do what I did up until where I died.
I don't see how you can be a Bruce Lee follower and think that he would have in any way shut himself down to knowledge.
And I think that's where we go from, that's where I think we conflate the actual martial art with the philosophy, because we're only using words in the comment section. So if someone says, well, my own personal expression of it is, I like this as my own personal expression. But when they use the words, my personal Jeet Kune Do is Hapkido and Capoeira and Thai boxing. And that's my personal. Other people are like that's not Jeet Kune Do at all.
Yeah, right.
So that I think we're conflating actual martial arts with philosophy.
Well, I think anybody who says that, right, my personal Jeet Kune Do is such and such. If there's somebody who thinks, oh well, he's saying that because he got that idea from Dan Inosanto, there's no way anybody got that idea from Dan Inosanto. There's no such thing as, oh, my person. No, there isn't that.
They could have written something down in their notes, because in 8 hours they're scripting. Later on, they look at it and they go, "Oh, I'm gonna make this my personal."
Hey, did you ever
you're misreading your notes? Go ahead.
Did you ever develop a seminar language, something to help you to take quicker or better notes?
Yeah, shorthands and stuff like that. The only thing I wasn't really able to do that well until somewhat later on was the grappling. Once you knew certain things, I could put little names for it, either submissions or transitions or positions.
Yeah.
But the notes, for example, for kickboxing combinations were always much easier, because you could just do CHC and you'd know it was cross or cross or something like that.
Yeah.
And as a stand-up guy from Taekwondo, where the Olympic Taekwondo would have like 4 footwork, and there was some really good Olympic Taekwondo guys that said, all you need is these 4 footwork and a roundhouse kick, and you can win in the Olympics. You don't need this other stuff. So really training those 4 footwork and the different kicks in with it, I already had a mind to put curriculum together for a lot of the stand-up stuff.
Right.
But the grappling stuff is funny to look at, like, you know, like I have like these shelves, I moved my library, but these shelves are all full of different stuff. And one row is all notebooks, and you could see the old notebooks. You could see where the afternoon happened. My writing starts to get like I'm more of a doctor. You can't read it. And the grappling has pictures. And I'm
Right.
like trying to draw like little pictures. Like, okay, this is what we're doing. And I look at the pictures later and I'm like, I needed a flip book. What the hell? What was I drawing? Like, what picture is this? You know? So later on, it was much easier where you could say, okay, Kasukatami, side position, and you could have a note to like pressure this, and then that made more sense because you could have a framework to like stick a couple little bullet points. Like if you train with Eric Paulson, he's like, if you train with Sensei Eric, all of a sudden he's showing you these 7 submissions from here, and then he's like, okay, once you go to here, do this and do this. You can also do this, and you're like, okay, wait a second. Oh, I don't have room for these bullet points. So you kind of have to have like you said, you have to have a few things. And then after that, you're like, well, I don't have, my shorthand isn't developed to fill everything in. So you'd still, okay, what were we doing from Kasukatami? Because that jumble I didn't get. So I never got to exactly where I should have been. I think we should be dictating, and instead of writing, we should just be dictating instead, you know?
Yeah. What do you think was the, okay, two opposite things. Beneficial aspect of the seminar industry that came about, and then the injurious aspect of the seminar industry.
Right. So I think if you do have an instructor, actually, that doesn't matter. Let me take that back. It's much easier if you do have an instructor. But if you have a way to train the material, you can get so much material. One seminar could last you almost a lifetime if you really train it. And you can only get a portion of the information from the seminar. But if you train that and you can build on it, I think that's a really great thing. So if you approach it in the scientific way that we would talk about with good training methodologies, right? Very little resistance with an honest training partner. You guys have a relationship and you can kind of work things and say, okay, now add more resistance. Okay, something's not working. Am I doing this right? And you can kind of see what worked and what didn't. When you go back, you can say, we got these last 2. Do you remember these last 2? We never really were able to pull off what was going on there, you know? Like I got the shoulder roll, I got the bob and weave, the Wong Pak Sao, and the shoulder stop, I can't pull off. So okay, next time we do the 1-2 series, we're gonna make sure we see the Wong Pak Sao or the one. I can never get that one. So those things, when you go back to it, you're like, okay, can you ask a question about this one because I didn't get that one? But you have to have that framework to know I honestly can do this one. I definitely can't do that one. So you have to, and then you can go from there. Right. The bad part, I think, is where you get into the drill masters, sometimes people call them, where there may be a tendency to show off in the seminars with how fast my stick work is or how great my combinations are and my high kicking, cross across high kick, cross across high kick. And nobody cares about that. Just have good basics, slow it down, or you just want to show off in the corner and they're not helping the beginners, because clearly there's people at seminars that are looking around like, Guru was like, okay, can you guys get this far? And people are just like, okay, go. And people are looking around like they got the focus mitts or the sticks and like, right. I have no idea what we're doing. And if instructors don't float around, then people aren't getting it, and they're not taking anything away. So you don't know what they're doing once they leave. And actually the people who are still networked in with us, you get into the thing where they don't really spar, but they can show all the stuff really well in the seminars. I'm not saying that's dishonest, because maybe there's some fear about sparring or people have a hard time bringing in that level of intensity. That's the comfort zone that they may have to try and work their way into a little bit, let me just controlled sparring where we only do like jabs because I'm a little bit scared. They have to try and work their way into that. But if the tendency at the seminars may be, let me just make sure Guru sees me and I look good for Guru Dan. And they may, there may not be, it may be somewhat superficial in that regard. Let me do Hubud really fast. Let me do Heaven 6 really fast. So I think you have both, depending on what strategy really is.
Yeah. When did you start teaching and where did you start teaching?
Well, I was teaching in Taekwondo before before I got into these arts.
As a red belt?
Yes, actually, I was at one school. I was the only non-Korean, non-black belt teaching. I was the only non-Korean teaching, and at the same time, I was the only non-black belt teaching. But it's because I refused to test for the black belt. So they were like, come on, just let him teach. Fine,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because they wanted me to be the black belt. It's like, no, we got to get this guy to be a black belt. But I think even though I wasn't good, I have to put that out there. And I was Joe Taekwondo with the fancy kicks, but I couldn't really pull it off in sparring. But I still seemed to be enough of a threat that they were coaching their guys in Korean, so that I didn't understand them. Like, I'm not even that good. Like, I'm honest about not being that good. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to do something. So in Taekwondo, I was teaching at like 18. And then Mike Krivka recommended me. I forget the gentleman's last name, but his name was Ben. And he left to go to the military and went back. And there was a period of time when they needed another head instructor, and Mikey Custodio was still there. And that guy's amazing. He's been with Seafood Pat the whole time. That guy's amazing. I love that guy. So we were back then. That was that was like before 9/11. So that's when I worked for the Trident Academy back then. It was right around 2000. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And then after that, when I hurt my back, I went back into personal training just to try and make ends meet. Didn't really work that well. And that's when I went full into education, went back to school at like maybe 2003.
Okay.
So recently I've been very on and off with Mike Krivka. I haven't been very consistent because I lost my job and got divorced, gave my ex the house and the divorce. That's why everything's out of here. I'm moving out of here soon. So I'm fully honest about the fact that I haven't been able to be consistent in the past few years, which is why I would never try to come at a lot of the guys who are instructors and have been instructors for the past few years. Well, I've been off in Beijing learning Chinese and doing this other stuff. So I wouldn't want to be disrespectful anyway, but I would never try to tell these guys that I know better than they do. I'm only trying to engage in a philosophical discussion about things that I love. It's part of who I am. Right. And I'm getting back into it now in a more professional capacity. I think I'm probably, I should be moving down to Aiken, South Carolina soon. And
really?
And there's a school in Augusta, Georgia that I think I'm gonna go and start training with those guys. I'm not sure who teaches in Augusta. It's I forget what it's called. I have to look up the school, but it doesn't say Gurdan and Asanto on the website, but it has all the hallmarks. It's all, and I'm not sure who's teaching there. Okay. I mean, it does say JKD Concepts. We're the only ones that can legitimately teach in the area, and they have all the arts.
It's got all the identifiers.
Yeah, exactly. It has all exactly.
I'll look it up for you. See if I know who it is. All right. Okay. So let's wrap this up with two things. One, tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you and philosophize endlessly.
Well, you can definitely find me in the group. That's my, obviously I'm on Facebook with you guys. And I also I can put my email in the comment section. People can email me if they choose to, not to, do things on Facebook or whatever. I can, after I can put it in the comment section.
Okay.
But I don't right now. I'm not training with anybody. I still keep in touch with a lot of these guys. So I'm not right now. Like I said, if I relocate to South Carolina, I may be. Either there's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Aiken, which I don't know who teaches there, but they definitely look like there's affiliated with, I think I saw Gracie Combatives on their site. So I'm about to relocate and start training with different people, which is also why I've been reaching out to a lot of instructors around the East Coast, because if I start getting back into this more full time, I definitely want to, I definitely want to come down to Miami and train with you. That we, like you said at the beginning, we haven't met in person, but Dax Manuel is down near you, and a couple other guys that would like to train with while I'm down there as well. So I may have to make an East Coast tour and see a bunch of guys. So
all right.
But the main way is definitely on Facebook to get in touch with me right now. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And as a speaker of Mandarin, right? Give us the correct pronunciation for Jeet Kune.
Oh, great point. So I would have to use this when I was in the mainland, because Jeet Kune is the Cantonese. So if you say Jeet Kune, they're not really sure. But if you say Jie Chuan Dao, then they would know. Jie is the Jeet, right?
Right.
Chuan is the Kun, because Kun, like Kun Tao, like
Yeah.
Kun Tao Silat, that's more of a, so Chuan, so Jie Chuan Dao. So you'd have to say Li Xiaolong, the Jie Chuan Dao, like, oh, Jie Chuan Dao, oh, I know, oh, Jurdaola. So, which sounds like Tai Chuan Dao. Taekwondo is Tai Chuan Dao. It gets really confusing because you'd say
Right.
like Tai Chuan is Thai boxing because Thai, but Tai Chuan Dao is Taekwondo, which is a different Thai. So it gets really confusing in Mandarin when we start talking about this stuff. Like Wushu is the actual traditional martial art, but Wushu is also the name for martial arts broadly.
Right.
So it definitely gets confusing trying to talk about these in China. But I did it. I pulled it off. Pulled it off.
All right. Okay. Well, Yuskiw, this was a pleasure, man. I'm really glad we got to do this.
The pleasure was all on this side of the screen. I assure you.
Okay. So let me just tell everybody that so Mr. Perez was not able to make it. Next Friday is Christmas Eve, and then the following Friday is All Year's Day. So we're not going to have dialogues. So I'm hoping that Mr. Perez will be fully recovered, and I'm going to bring the two of you back on. So the next time that we have an episode of Jeet Kune Dialogues, you'll be on again. With
all right, and we can start with his story because you guys already heard my story tonight.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you guys
pleasure,
for tuning in.
All right. Okay. You take care.
All right. You too. See you soon.
All right. So that was episode 205. And like I just said, we'll be off the air for the next 2 Fridays. I'll still be on Facebook, and I'll still be in touch with you guys. I won't leave you alone. And then early in the new year, we'll start with the 2 mics. And if you have never read anything that they write, I really do admire their approach to discussing Jeet Kune. Everybody knows that my thing is, like I just said to Yuskiw, is to elevate the quality of your interaction with your Jeet Kune brothers, to work on refining. You know, we get a lot of people who talk about that the art of Jeet Kune is to refine, but you don't see the application of that in interaction on Facebook, which is why a lot of people are becoming entirely frustrated with the Jeet Kune thing. And what hurts me is that, you know, somebody comes in and they take a look at this, they take a look at what we're doing on Facebook, and they go, this is what is supposed to be representative. All the name calling and the nitpicking and, oh, you don't know this, and oh, you're wrong and this one's right and whatever. That's supposed to be representative of the great art left to us by the great Bruce Lee? I think not. Anyhow, enough lecturing from me. So no Jeet Kune dialogues for the next 2 Fridays, but then we'll hit back with a bang on I think it's January 7th, if I remember correctly, right? But I'll see you guys before then. Next Wednesday, we'll still keep the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast. All right, so that's it. Feel free, share, like, comment, ask questions. I'll ask Yuskiw to go through the comments and see if there's anything he needs to reply to. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods. And that's it, right? So have a great weekend. Stay safe wherever you are. And this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off until the next episode.